There is a kind of morning that most people never talk about. Not the kind from advertisements, where light pours through clean windows and someone smiles over fresh coffee. Not that. The kind I mean is quieter than that, a little heavier. It is the morning where you wake up and for a few seconds you are not quite sure what day it is. And then you remember, and the remembering is not exactly painful. It is just very ordinary, very still. You sit on the edge of the bed. The floor is cold. The house is quiet in a way that has its own texture. And somehow, without thinking too much about it, you stand up, you walk to the kitchen, you fill the kettle, you wait. That small sequence of movements, sitting up, standing, walking, filling, that is where I want to begin today. Because I think those small movements are doing something important. Something we rarely give them credit for. There is a woman I want to tell you about. Her name is not important. She is in her late 60s. She lives alone now, has for about 4 years, since her husband passed. They were married for 31 years, and she did not expect the silence that came after. Not the kind of silence she had hoped for during the busy years, when she used to think that quiet would feel like rest. This silence was different. It had weight. In the first year, she did what many people do. She kept herself busy in ways that were not really about living, but about not stopping. She visited her children when they invited her. She rearranged cupboards. She watched television until late, not because she was enjoying it, but because the sound of other voices made the rooms feel less empty. She told me, or rather, she told someone who told me that the hardest part was not grief, exactly, or not only grief, it was the loss of the shape of a day. That is how she put it, the shape of a day. When you live with someone, the day has structure that you do not even notice until it is gone. You eat at certain times. There are arrivals and departures, small negotiations, what to make for dinner, whether the window should be open or closed, someone to say good night to. When that structure disappears, something strange happens. Time becomes formless, and formless time, it turns out, is very hard to live inside. She described the afternoons as the worst, long and gray and offering nothing in particular. She would find herself standing in the middle of her kitchen, not knowing what she had gone there for. Not because her memory was failing, but because without the scaffolding of another person's needs, her own needs had become somehow harder to locate. Somewhere in the second year, something small shifted. She started making tea at the same time every afternoon. Not because anyone told her to. Not because she read something in a book. It simply happened the way some things do, quietly and without announcement. 3 o'clock, the kettle. A particular cup, blue, with a small chip on the handle that she had never gotten around to throwing away. She would sit at the kitchen table, not necessarily doing anything, and drink her tea. At first it felt strange, deliberate, like she was performing a ritual she had not quite believed in. But after a few weeks, something changed. She noticed that she began to look forward to 3 o'clock, not with great excitement, just a small pull, a gentle expectation. And that small pull, that looking forward, was something she had not felt in a long time. This is the thing about rituals that I find so quietly remarkable. They do not ask you to feel better. They do not require you to be healed or ready or even present in any deep way. They simply ask you to show up, to repeat a simple motion, to be there in the body, in the ordinary afternoon. And somehow, in that repetition, something begins to accumulate. Not happiness, exactly. Something more durable than that. We tend to think of routines as things we do when life is functioning well. Wake up, exercise, eat properly, sleep at a reasonable hour. The infrastructure of a healthy life. But this misses something important. Routine is not only the product of a stable life, it can be the foundation one. There is a reason that people in hospitals, people going through chemotherapy or recovering from surgery or living in care facilities, often hold on to small rituals with surprising tenacity. The morning paper, even when eyes are tired. The particular soap. The walk to the window at a certain hour. It is not habit for its own sake. It is something else. A ritual repeated becomes a kind of landmark. A point in the day that you can locate yourself by. Here I am. It is this time. This is what I do now. That might sound small, and it is small. But smallness is not the same as insignificance. For many people, especially those navigating loss, or the strange disorientation of retirement, or the slow withdrawal of relationships that happens in later life. That locating, that simple "here I am," can be the thing that holds the day together from the inside. Not dramatically, not in a way anyone would notice from the outside, but in a way that is real and that matters, and that should perhaps be spoken about more honestly than it usually is. I think of another person now. A man, early 70s, retired a few years ago after decades in engineering. His wife is still alive. They are still together, but their children are grown and far away, and the years have made their household quieter in ways that crept up without warning. He told someone that the hardest thing about retirement was not having nothing to do. There was plenty to do. The garden needed tending. There were books he had always meant to read. There were projects. The hardest thing was that none of it felt necessary. That is the word he used. Necessary. When you work, there is a particular kind of necessity built into the days. People need things from you. There are deadlines and consequences, and the feeling of being woven into something larger than yourself. And then one day that stops, and you are still there, still capable, still yourself. but the necessity has gone somewhere. He started walking every evening after dinner, not for health. He was not especially interested in health at that point. He walked because he needed something to do with the hours between dinner and sleep. And walking required no justification. You simply went out the door. But then something unexpected happened. He began to notice things, not in a grand awakening sort of way, more like the particular way the light fell through the trees at that hour. A neighbor who always stood at her gate around the same time, watering her plants with an intensity that suggested she was thinking about something else entirely. The sound of a football being kicked against a wall somewhere around the corner. Always the same sound, the same corner, which meant there was a child there. A child with a particular kind of energy for that hour of the evening. These things had always been there. He had simply never been still enough or slow enough to register them. And slowly, without his quite noticing, the evening walk stopped being something he did to fill time. It became the part of the day he returned to himself. That is a strange phrase, perhaps. Return to yourself. But I think many people who have moved through grief or depression or simply the long disorientation of a life that has changed faster than expected. Many of those people understand what it means to lose yourself in the busyness of managing and to need something that brings you back. The walk was not therapy. It was not healing in any clinical sense. It was simply a ritual, an appointment with the ordinary world. And the ordinary world, it turned out, was quietly remarkable when encountered slowly and at the same hour every day. We live in a time that is very interested in meaning. Big meaning, purpose, legacy, the question of what it all amounts to. And these are not foolish questions. They deserve to be asked. But I wonder sometimes if we have made them so large that we have lost sight of where meaning actually lives for most people. Most of the time. It does not live in the grand moments mostly, or not only there. It lives in the repetition, in the small accumulated weight of days that had their own particular texture. The cup on the table, the walk at the same hour, the radio turned on in the kitchen every morning. Not because the news is interesting, but because the sound of it means the day has begun. There is a Norwegian word. Hygge is the more famous one, but the word I am thinking of is nærvær, presence. The quality of being actually here, in this moment, in this body, in this particular arrangement of light and sound and temperature. Rituals, I think, are one of the most reliable ways of arriving at nærvær. Not because they are extraordinary, but because they are not. Because the ordinariness of them allows the attention to settle. The nervous watching for what comes next. The scanning, the planning, the quiet dread that so many people carry. All of that softens slightly in the middle of something familiar. The kettle boils. You have done this 10,000 times. You know what comes next. And in knowing what comes next, you can, for a moment, simply be where you are. A particular kind of loneliness settles on people who live alone and who are no longer young. It is not always dramatic. It rarely announces itself. It is more like a background frequency, a low hum that is present even when everything else seems fine. When the food is good, when the book is interesting, when you have spoken to someone during the day and the conversation was warm, the hum is still there. I do not think ritual removes that hum. That would be too simple and probably not true. But I think ritual can change the relationship to it, can make it less frightening, less like a verdict, and more like a weather condition. Present, sometimes uncomfortable, but not the whole story. The woman with the blue cup knew this. She did not stop being lonely. She did not cure herself of missing her husband. But somewhere in that 3 o'clock ritual, she found something she described, quietly, as company. Not the company of another person, the company of herself. That sounds almost sentimental, I know, but I think she meant it precisely. There is a version of solitude that is simply absence. The absence of others, of noise, of distraction. And then there is a version that is something else. A quality of being with oneself that is not uncomfortable. That is, perhaps, even quietly nourishing. Ritual helps build that second kind. Not all at once, not without difficulty, but steadily over time, the way any relationship deepens, through repetition, through showing up, through small moments of recognition. When I think about the routines that have held people together, I notice two kinds. The ones we inherit from family, from culture, from religion, from the patterns of whoever raised us. These carry a particular kind of weight, the smell of particular food on particular days, the way certain music belongs to certain seasons, the gestures that were performed so many times by so many hands that they feel less like habits and more like memories stored in the body. These inherited rituals can be a great comfort, and they can also be unexpectedly fragile. When the people who shared them are gone, the rituals can feel hollow. Performances with no audience, motions going through without their meaning. This is something not often spoken about. The way a ritual can outlive its original warmth. How strange it is to make your mother's recipe and feel both close to her and terribly far from her at the same time. And then there are the rituals we make for ourselves, often without meaning to, often without understanding that that is what we are doing. The afternoon walk that became necessary, the tea at 3, the Sunday spent in a particular way, the market in the morning, the book in the afternoon, the phone call to someone before dinner. These are not inherited. They are invented slowly out of the materials of a life that has found its own new shape. Both kinds matter. The inherited ones carry history. The invented ones carry the self, who you are now, in this particular life, at this particular age, which is different from who you were before. There is something the body knows, even when the mind is elsewhere. Without rhythm, without the repetition of small, reliable moments, something in us becomes untethered, not immediately, not dramatically, but over time. The absence of routine does something to the inner life, makes it more porous, more vulnerable to the loudness of anxiety or the gray weight of emptiness. People who have been ill for a long time often describe the return to small routines as one of the most significant parts of recovery. Not exercise, not diet, not the dramatic interventions, just the ability to make coffee in the morning, to dress as if the day has a purpose, to take a short walk and return to the same door. The ritual is not the destination. It is more like the ground beneath the feet. You do not usually think about the ground. You simply walk. When the ground is solid, you can look up. You can notice other things. Your attention has room to move. When the ground is uncertain, when the day has no shape, when nothing is expected of you and you are expected nowhere, attention tends to turn inward in ways that are not always kind. The mind with nothing else to do begins to do what minds do when they are unoccupied. It worries, it regrets, it rehearses old conversations, it anticipates troubles that have not yet arrived. This is not a character flaw. It is simply what minds do. But routine, small, ordinary, repeated routine, gives the mind somewhere to land, a stable surface from which to engage with the world rather than circle endlessly within itself. There is a kind of person, and perhaps you know this kind of person. Perhaps you are this kind of person who is dismissive of small pleasures, who feels that the cup of tea is not enough, that the evening walk is not enough, that something larger is needed, more connection, more purpose, more of something. And until that larger thing arrives, the small things are merely waiting. I understand that feeling. I think it comes from somewhere real. But I have also watched people wait for the larger thing, while the smaller things went unnoticed and unlived. And I have watched other people who had perhaps given up on the larger thing arriving, or who had simply decided to stop waiting, discover a quiet richness in the small. Not contentment exactly, not resignation, something more active than either, an attention, a willingness to be fully present in the ordinary. The afternoon cup of tea, drunk slowly, in the particular light of that hour, in the warmth of the kitchen, that is not nothing. When it is received fully, when the attention is actually there, it carries something that is hard to name, but that the body recognizes. A Norwegian grandmother might call it Fred. Peace, not the grand kind, the small, ordinary, daily kind, the kind that accumulates, the kind that holds. There is something else worth saying. As we age, the rituals change, not always by choice. The morning run becomes the morning walk. the walk becomes shorter. The kitchen where you cook for many becomes the kitchen where you cook for one or two. The gatherings that once filled the calendar thin out, not through any failure of love, but through the ordinary arithmetic of time. People move away. People die. People grow into their own lives that take them elsewhere. And with each of these changes, some rituals are lost. That loss is real. It should not be minimized. There is grief in it, quiet and accumulated. But what I have noticed, in the people I have watched, in the stories I have heard, is that there is also, very often, a kind of making, a rebuilding, a slow discovery of new rhythms that fit the new shape of things. Sometimes these new rituals feel smaller than what came before, simpler, but simplicity is not lost, always. Sometimes it is refinement. Sometimes the noise of the old life had been covering something that the quieter life reveals. The blue cup at 3, the evening walk, the radio in the morning, the call on Sunday, the bread made from scratch on a cold Saturday, because the smell of it fills the house in a particular way. These are not grand things, but they are, I think, the architecture of a life that still belongs to the person living it. It is late now in the story I have been telling. The woman with the blue cup is still making her tea at 3. She told someone not long ago that she had been doing it for nearly 3 years, that it had become, in her words, something she did not want to miss. Not because anything remarkable happened at 3 o'clock, but because in that small ritual she felt, in some quiet way, that she was still here, still engaged with the day, still, in some simple sense, living. The man who walked every evening still walks. He has mapped the neighborhood more thoroughly than anyone he knows. He knows the light in every season. He knows the neighbor at the gate. He knows the child with the football has grown, and the football sounds have changed. A bit more force behind them now, a bit more intention, and something about tracking that small change over years has given him, he says, a feeling he can only describe as tenderness. Toward the neighborhood, toward time itself. Neither of these people would describe their lives as particularly happy. They have losses and difficulties and fears like anyone. They are not finished with their grief, and they are probably never quite done worrying. But they are, in some real and important sense, held together by small things, by repeated things, by the reliable, gentle, ordinary motions of a life that has found its own particular rhythm. And perhaps that is enough. Perhaps that is, in fact, quite a lot. There is a kind of quiet that comes to a person who has stopped waiting for the extraordinary and has begun, instead, to receive the ordinary with something approaching reverence. Not all the time, not perfectly, but sometimes, in the late afternoon, when the kettle boils, when the light is doing that particular thing through the window, when the street outside is going about its business and the cup is warm in your hands, then for a little while, the world is simply this. And this, it turns out, is where most of life actually lives. If this quiet moment resonated with you, you are always welcome here. This channel was created for slow reflections, honest emotions, and the thoughts many people carry silently through life. If you'd like more stories like this, you can gently subscribe and return whenever you need a peaceful place to think, feel, or simply listen. Thank you for spending this moment here tonight. Take care of yourself and rest well.